Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Miller with another First Chapter Friday. The book I'm going to read today is called Running Wild. It is by Lucy Jane Bledsoe, and it's a really awesome book. It's about a girl, her name is Willa, and her father, after the death of her mother, decided to move her and her twin brothers to the middle of nowhere, Alaska, where they are living what's called off the grid. No electricity, no running water, that type of thing. No stores around. They go once a year to get supplies from a town that's nearby. So it is a really, really awesome book. And in the story, Willa's dad has decided to not worry so much about the coming winter. And in Alaska, that's a big no-no. So Willa decides to take matters into her own hands, and it is such a good book. When the sun starts to rise, a dim light leaks through our cabin window, revealing the contents of our lives. 4 cots with sleeping bags, the black cast-iron wood stove with its pipes shooting up through the roof, a rough-hewn wooden table, and 4 chairs. Our cooking pots hanging from the wall opposite my bed. It's early October, and in a few weeks the sun won't rise at all. I am 12 years old and live with my dad and 10-year-old twin brothers, Keith and Seth, in the heart of the Alaskan wilderness. We moved here 5 years ago after Mama died. At first, the hard work, the bright Arctic summer sun, even the intensity of the dark northern winter seemed to scour away our sadness. Dad's dream of living off the land by our own wits and labor was so forceful it carried us along like a swift current. As much as we missed Mama, we laughed a lot in those early years, and Dad tried to make it fun, teaching us how to identify edible plants, helping us to build a raft for messing around on our stream, and showing us how to play chess. But over the years, life here has gotten harder, not easier, and so has Dad. If we complain, he says, humans are animals, nothing more. We need to eat, drink, sleep, that's it, just like the bears and crows. The sooner people realize they're nothing special, the better off we'll be as a species. I get up and reach deep into my sleeping bag to fetch my notebook. Keeping a journal was Dad's idea. He called me the family scribe and wanted me to document everything. How the helicopter dropped us off with just the basics, including some food to get us started, a big tent, and the parts for our wood stove, a few tools, pots and utensils, packets of seeds, and the encyclopedia set. However, the course of that first summer, we built our cabin and planted our garden, hunted for game, fished for trout and salmon, and dropped and stored food for the winter. How Dad made our table, chairs, and rowboat from scratch. Sometimes, when I read these earlier journal entries, I laugh at my big, blocky, childish printing, with all the corrections and additions, in Dad's handwriting. He hasn't asked to see my journal in over a year, but even so, I keep it hidden, because he wouldn't like reading what I've been writing about lately, the things I want and miss, and that I'm worried we're not going to survive this winter. Dad and the boys have been hunting almost daily this autumn, hiking for miles through the wilderness, searching for moose and deer, with 0 luck. Most nights they fall into bed right after dinner and sleep hard. Now Dad is snoring loudly, and the twins so thin they barely mound their sleeping bags. Their little boy eyelashes, fluttering with dreams, are deep in sleep. I yank my jeans over my long underwear and put on my parka, grab my boots, and slip out the door. I forgot socks, but shove my feet into the boots anyway, tie the laces tight, and pull the fleece hat and gloves from my parka pockets. I walk down the creek, the muscle ripple running through our lives. Dad made up its name, Sweet Creek. Our rowboat sits on the small pebbled beach. About 100 yards downstream, the creek bends out of sight. Eventually it flows into a bigger stream that runs into the powerful Yukon River, which leads to Fort Yukon, a town just a short distance from the Arctic Circle. I've only been to the settlement once, when we first came to Alaska. Dad makes the journey once a year in the early summer after the big melt. He brings back things like beans, rice, peanuts, cornmeal, oatmeal, bullets, matches, first aid supplies, new boots, and clothes. Opening those packages is always so exciting. Sometimes he tucks a few oranges or a hunk of cheese in with our staples, treats that last about 3 minutes. Dad doesn't like indulgences, but we all love chocolate, and he never fails to buy bags of chocolate chips so I can make cookies. This year I was shocked to see that he also brought back whiskey bottles. Dad's a recovering alcoholic and had been sober for 7 years before Mama died. She always said how proud she was of him for stopping drinking. Dad can do the round-trip journey to Fort Yukon in less than a week. While he was away, he used to leave us with Clarissa and Robert Stone Taylor, who live 15 miles up Sweet Creek in their own log cabin. It's my favorite week every year. We play board games, learn new songs, and even perform plays that we make up. The Stone Taylors have more luxuries than we do, including lots of drawing paper and colored pencils. Seth spends most of his time drawing. Keith likes to help them tinker with the generator, which makes power for their cabin. But last summer, Dad had an argument with the Stone Taylors. As we were leaving, Clarissa said it wasn't any of her business, and she knew everyone in Alaska carried firearms. But she and Robert thought that the twins were too young for rifles. Dad launched into a tirade, saying that every child as young as 5 years old in Fort Yukon has his or her own rifle. Besides, Dad carried on, no one tells him how to raise his own children. Consequently, we didn't even get to go to the Stone Taylor's cabin this summer. You're 12 and 10 after all, Dad said. Bear cubs leave their mothers and start living on their own at the age of 2. He left Fort Yukon in late June, and he was right. My brothers and I did just fine, even though he stayed away for 2 weeks this trip. When he wasn't home on time, I acted as though I'd known all along that he would be gone longer than usual, and I told the boys that he had lots of business in Fort Yukon. Of course, they asked what business, so I made up answers like banking and phoning relatives, and then to explain what banking is and who our relatives were. Truly, after the 8th day of his absence, I wondered if he'd ever return, and worried that he had an accident somewhere along the route. I have never been so relieved as I was when he came rowing up our creek in early July. This morning, I turned my back on the creek and faced our small collections of buildings. We are surrounded by forest, but the cabin sits on level spread of meadow between the creek and the hill where the helicopter dropped us off. There are also 3 outbuildings near the cabin: the woodshed, the cache, a tiny house with an airtight door on tall stilts with a ladder running up the front where we store our food to keep it away from animals, and the outhouse. Dad carved a moon on its door back when he still took time for fun details. On my way to the outhouse, I walked past the woodshed. Usually by this time of year, we have a big stack of firewood. We do gather wood in the winter too, but even so, we fell short last year during the coldest month of January, when we couldn't get out much and had to ration our fires, going to bed early to keep warm. Dad even burned our encyclopedia set. He did the first volume in a fit of frustration because the kindling was wet, but when he saw how upset I was, it seemed to spur him on, as if my wanting to read all those articles was a weakness. He said the laws of biology were the only knowledge we needed. Every day after that, he burned another volume. I used to love studying the maps, reading about astronauts and stars, finding pictures of Chinese Name-bomb or Guatemalan girls, and pretending that they were my friends. When I asked Dad about our firewood supply the other day, he waved me off, saying he couldn't take any time away from hunting. After quickly using the outhouse, inside, there's a hole cut in a wooden bench suspended over a deep earthen pit, and rinsing my hands in the creek. I climb the hill, kicking through the mat of yellow and brown leaves. At the top, the first rays of sun are spiking above the evergreen horizon. I love that moment when the sunlight touches me. I sit in the crunchy leaves and start writing. The boys are too young to remember much about our life with Mama in Seattle, but I am not. I write about how I miss Pike Place Market in Seattle, where you can buy any kind of fruit and vegetable. Where musicians serenade the shoppers, where we used to stop and chat with neighbors. I miss school and looking things up on a computer. I miss sleepovers and birthday parties, the smell of libraries, and all those books that have been held by dozens of hands, and Christmas lights, the way Seattle gets twinkly for the holidays, and I miss having my own bedroom. I miss Mama. I also write about Dad standing right here on top of the hill yesterday at dusk, shooting his rifle in the air, shouting at the sky. When I called out that supper was ready, he just looked at me and headed into the woods. All right, so I'm going to stop there. This is a really, really good book, and Willa does things that I could never imagine doing as a 12-year-old, let alone an adult. So I hope you will come to the library and check out this great book, Running Wild, and I hope you have a great day.